Hey guys, Kid Kino here, bringing the Kaiju Binge into a new millennium for the new year. To start us off, we've got another Emmerich Godzilla knockoff that kinda straddles the turn of the millennium in an odd way. Reptilian was originally released unfinished in South Korea in 1999, and re-released worldwide after reshoots and additional VFX work in 2001. The original version is unreleased on home video anywhere in the world, so I'm reviewing the 2001 version, but I'm slotting it in at its original release date, honestly just to get it out of the way. Reptilian is a very weird, very bad movie. It was directed by a famous Korean comic actor named Shim Hyung-rae, who decided to ride the wave of Godzilla publicity with a very, very loose remake of Yongari. The effects, even in the more polished version, are pretty special, but the most egregious thing about this movie is honestly the writing. This is a movie made in Korea by Korean filmmakers, but aimed at a global market with an American setting and characters speaking English. Considering that, you might expect a few things about the script to seem a little off, but it feels as if it was written solely based on what the filmmakers knew of Hollywood blockbusters, even to the point of ignoring basic aspects of how one could reasonably assume society and human interaction work anywhere in the world. Just off the top of my head, there's this dirtbag photojournalist who seems to mostly do tabloid stuff, even saying as much himself.
Really, I just kind of think of myself as a tabloid photographer.
But he's introduced in a scene where another character knows him for a piece of his published in Time magazine.
Yes, I read his article, if you can call it an article, on ancient civilizations in Time magazine.
There's this wacky representative of this secret X-Files agency that even the president isn't aware of.
I'm not even sure the White House knows we exist.
Who interferes with the military's operations so that the aliens controlling Yongari will come to Earth so his agency can capture and study them. This isn't handled with any kind of intrigue or subtlety. He just pulls a comical heel turn alone without backup in the middle of the command center where he can easily be stopped. There's also plenty of non-character stuff that just kinda doesn't really make sense. The aliens have their own monster, Psycor, but carry out basically their entire invasion by reanimating and controlling the recently excavated skeleton of Yongari, only releasing Psycor to kill Yongari once their control is broken. I understand bolstering their invasion force with Yongari as long as he's there, but why not just attack with two monsters in the first place? Nothing else about the movie is much good either. The acting is pretty uniformly bad, even considering the script that the cast is working with. I don't know what's going on with the lead actress's accent.
Wait a minute, Professor.
What now, Holly?
Shouldn't we call the authorities? An official investigation has to take place before we can proceed. Something just doesn't seem right. That was the third so-called accident this week.
Apparently monster suits were constructed for this movie and used during the production, but Shim decided mid-stride to go with the all-CG route, which is honestly frustrating, because the CGI looks awful even in its finished state, and what miniature effects remain are, if not that convincing, infinitely more interesting to look at. This was the most expensive South Korean film ever made at the time of its release, and it could have looked at least presentable, but this bafflingly wasteful decision left Shim with no time or money to finish the VFX in time for its contractually obligated release date.
Then I saw the movie. Beautiful young Gary, great looking skin, the storyline's starting to develop, and then he starts to lose his skin, and before long he becomes a stick figure. And I'm seeing a movie crumble before my eyes. And I'm in shock. I'm going, what? Is this what they're gonna release? They had to release on a hard date, and this was a contract between the government of South Korea that had put up some money, private investors. So they screened it in South Korea, in Seoul, and it wasn't complete.
What a fucking mess. Anyway, enough of that. So, after Emmerich's Godzilla underperformed at the box office and was panned by critics, sequel plans were scrapped, and Toho, who hadn't planned to make another Godzilla film until 2005, went ahead and made Godzilla 2000, which went to Japanese theaters in December '99. While I've said before that the recut and dubbed US version is generally better, The original version is already an improvement over most of the 90s Godzilla films. Hiroshi Kashiwabara and Wataru Mimura, the screenwriters of Space Godzilla and Mechagodzilla 2, respectively, center the film around a father-daughter duo of Twister-esque Godzilla chasers, with a young reporter grudgingly along for the ride, and some entertaining foils in a government bureaucrat and his right-hand man, a former colleague of the protagonist. Takao Okawara is back in the director's chair, and Koichi Kawakita is succeeded by new special effects director Kenji Suzuki. I suspect a more functional relationship between Okawara and Suzuki, plus new cinematographer Yudai Kato, account for how much stronger the visuals are in this film. The CGI and digital compositing are kinda shaky, but they're utilized better here than in the Mothra trilogy. There is one odd thing about the visuals. This film was apparently shot in Super 35, a format that deliberately exposes much more vertical picture area than will actually be shown. I suspect it was originally shot with a 1.85:1 exhibition ratio in mind, like that of the other 90s Godzilla films, but was ultimately formatted to a scope ratio instead. I say this because there are a lot of shots that feel a bit tight or sometimes awkwardly framed, but look like they'd seem a lot more natural if expanded vertically to 1.85. Luckily, these shots were framed a lot better than the previous films in the first place, so the cropped version is only about as awkward as the Versus series' intended compositions. There are also some aspects of the alien invasion plot that allude to the Y2K bug. I understand why these were trimmed from the US cut, which came out well into the year 2000, but I really enjoy them as they flesh out the alien intelligence a little more. I like all the Y2K era tech in this movie, honestly. Orga's a pretty cool monster, if a little generic. Takayuki Hattori is back with some more solid music. Godzilla 2000 is good fun. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla has a lot of cool ideas, but it just doesn't click for me. It's got an Ultraman-style science patrol, batshit Showa-style pseudoscience, a cool female lead, the return of Yuriko Hoshi, a neat new spin on a minor Showa-era creature, and a killer score by Michiru Oshima. It feels like I should like this movie more than I do. Part of the issue is that the script, another by Kashiwabara and Mimura, just doesn't fit everything together very well. The Dimension Tide and Megaguirus plots do kind of intersect, but they're not really integrated very well. It has the feel of a sitcom episode that has an A plot and B plot that are almost completely unrelated, even though these plots aren't really unrelated. It's weird. They also do the Godzilla attacking energy sources thing from 2000 again, but elaborate on it by inventing a fictional plasma energy technology, only for it to still not really have anything to do with anything else. It also doesn't help that the effects are noticeably weaker. It might be that it's attempting more high-concept sci-fi stuff on a slightly smaller budget, but frame rate conversion errors in composite shots? It's just a rough watch. Godzilla, Mothra, and Kingidra Giant Monsters All-Out Attack is easily the most thoughtful of the Millennium Godzilla films. Shusuke Kaneko was an excellent choice of director, and it's his approach that keeps this film solid despite the various circumstances limiting it. For one thing, Toho's insistence on using Mothra and Kingidra results in them being haphazardly slotted into roles meant for Varan and Anguillus, with Mothra's new status as a guardian of a lake being especially odd. The location being chosen for its thematic ties to the history of Japan as a nation means it couldn't really just be changed. I'm not saying changes to Mothra's origin and significance or Ghidra's strength or characterization are wrong, but they're clearly artifacts of marketing decisions and come at the expense of the story. It also falls a bit short of the Gamera trilogy in terms of its effects. Putting it down to the absence of Shinji Higuchi as effects director might be oversimplifying it, but one does see similar issues to the previous couple films, especially in terms of iffy digital effects. GMK generally just isn't quite as strong visually as the Gamera trilogy. Megaguirus cinematographer Masahiro Kishimoto returns here in place of any of Kaneko's Gamera collaborators, with similarly so-so results. The fighter jet attack on Godzilla, storyboarded by Higuchi, stands out as a glimpse of what could have been, but otherwise the film is, at least in my opinion, mostly carried by its solid script. And last up for this episode, we've got Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. I've made a whole half-hour video essay about why I love this movie, and I don't think I really have that much more to say about it here. It just slaps, seemingly by dumb luck, as it's largely the same team that made Mechagodzilla working from a script that uses nearly all the same elements. The character arcs are immaculately constructed. You've got a female lead played by a model without that angle really being played up for fan service. You've got Michiru Oshima providing non-stop bangers again. It's great. I was kind of worried this film would be less effective after I'd seen it so many times and examined it in such detail, but it still got me. And that's it for this episode. Next up, we've got the sequel to that film, Godzilla's 50th Anniversary, Peter Jackson's King Kong, Gamera's underrated Last Hurrah, and a fantastic political critique by Bong Joon-ho. These videos might be a bit shorter from here on out, as Godzilla vs. Kong was moved up to March as I was writing this script, so I've kinda gotta work fast. In the meantime, if you want to support this channel and the film preservation projects I'm working on, you can become a patron at the Patreon link in the description. Big thanks to all my current patrons, especially Bob Burns, Exploder Button, John Paneer, and Ryan Clark. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.